Hi, my name is Tracy, and this is my older adult oral video presentation. Today I am going to be talking about my Aunt Linda, who is getting ready to turn 70 years old, and I'm going to be focusing on the middle adulthood age stage with her. Middle adulthood is really described as those ages 40 to 64. And during this time, there's a couple things that Erickson says should be happening. Some of those, I'm not going to list them all, are you're able to reap the rewards of personal and professional accomplishment. So meaning that you spent your earlier adult years, going to school and getting a career and really establishing yourself, and you started a family and you've done all those things. And by now, most people in this stage, they own a home and they have a solid career and they're able to kick back a little bit and really start planning their future, looking at retirement and reaping the rewards of all the hard work. Also in this stage, people find themselves to be more confident and comfortable with who they are, worried less about, what other people think or behaving in a certain way. They're really comfortable with themselves as far as where they've come so far. Even body image and things like that really start to be just normal to them, and they're not really thinking about other things. They also begin to experience some physical changes. Women start to go through menopause. They usually start this towards the beginning of the middle adulthood phase, and by the end of that stage, they're pretty much done. Also, men and women alike are starting to notice some changes, for example, loss of vision. Aches, pains, their knees feel sore after a run now, or and they're just kind of feeling old. They're starting to feel it. Usually things at this stage are correctable, pop in a leave, do something like that. But they are starting to notice changes in their body that's indicating they are getting older. And then one of the more interesting things that I think is this whole idea of like they're kind of sandwiched in between raising or finishing raising their children, but also taking care of their parents. So at this point, their children might still be in the house or going off to college, somewhere in there. But their parents are also, retiring and starting to really go through some things where they need support. So this person finds themselves in the middle during middle adulthood and is really, again, taking care of the children, but also taking care of their parents. Some important experiences that I would say my Aunt Linda had in middle adulthood would, number one, be a new marriage. She had a marriage in her younger years, which certainly was not healthy at all. And, I relate this to an article that Matthias Almadanis, I'm probably butchering his name, wrote regarding divorce and personality. And he looked at groups of people as far as, when they got divorced and how that shaped their personality in middle adulthood. And he had groups of people who had a second or third marriage and those who stayed single. And he considered, going through that and the societal influences and judgments on somebody who is divorced and how did that affect them in adulthood. And he did find some connections there. But I think for my aunt, it was mostly positive. No, my grandparents weren't happy that she got a divorce. And certainly, she had a son in that relationship and there were some negative impacts there. But for the most part, it really taught her self-reliance and gave her a lot of self-confidence, where it definitely changed her personality, but much more to the positive rather than the negative. Also, during this life phase, in addition to having a new husband, her son got married. Her and her son are and were extremely close. And I think, too, there's another article that I read that talks about child rearing and looks at how that shapes your personality. So how you're rearing your child at newborn and adolescence and the things that you go through with them and the bonds or the issues that you have, how does that shape you as a person and how does that influence you in your middle adulthood years? And I think I see some influences there with my aunt. Her and my cousin Eric became very close. It was just the two of them for a really long time. And her first husband, when they divorced, he left. They have not seen him again even once in their lives. He has not written, he has not stayed in touch, not paid support, nothing. So it really forced them to bond, and it really influenced how she disciplined him too. He got away with a lot. I think there was some guilt there. There was also, she was trying to work and trying to take care of him, and so he had a little bit more leniency than he probably should have. But also there was a lot of trust there. And when he was disciplined or corrected for things, there was a lot of trust in that relationship. And I see how that has influenced her in middle adulthood as well. And how she approaches situations, whether it's with him or other situations where things need to be corrected. I think her experience doing that with him has certainly influenced her here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that during her crisis. But also, she's traveled a lot in the past couple of years. She's gone to Russia 9 times. She's gone to Alaska. She does a lot of travel in the U.S. She has a couple timeshares. So that has been great for her in this stage to really get out and see the world and get to meet new people. There was an early retirement, which again, I'll talk about during crisis. And then her expanding of social groups. Have been really important experiences for her, getting to know new people, seeing new things, really getting out of her shell has been great. As far as challenges and accomplishments, there were a couple pretty significant challenges for my Aunt Linda from her 40s to her early 60s. First was the loss of her father, would be my grandfather. And while that was obviously sad and devastating, even more so devastating to my aunt was the loss of her mother. My grandmother and my aunt were extremely close. My aunt was the youngest of 3, and they grew up on a farm, and she did a lot of helping my grandmother in the house and things like that. And even though her siblings were involved, obviously, with my grandmother and were there as she was starting to pass away, and we knew things were going to come to an end. It was really my aunt who led the charge for taking care of her and was her advocate and was there for everything. And it's been almost 20 years, and when you talk to my aunt about it, it's been yesterday. She still has things on my grandmother she won't give away. She still refers to my grandmother as if she's here. And she's not crazy or anything, but she's just having a really, really hard time processing it. And I see how that has influenced her. Emotionally, she has had a real struggle processing this. And another one of the things that I researched was an article by Zimmerman, which talked about emotional regulation and how a child is emotional in their adolescence and being able to regulate that emotion as they get older. And it almost seems like my aunt wasn't quite as emotional when she was younger, and it's kind of taken another turn. She's become a lot more emotional now, but it's really because she's allowing herself to be. One of the things I'm going to talk about in the crisis is how she wasn't allowed to cry, although at the same time she was being told she was a girl and that's what girls do. So there was a lot of conflicting things being thrown at her growing up. And so now I think she's at the point where she feels like I can feel what I want to feel. And if I want to still cry about this or about that or get upset, I'm going to do it. And healthy or not, that's something that she continues to process even in her, older adult life. Another thing was the lack of grandchildren. When her son married, they tried to have children, had a couple miscarriages, and decided it wasn't something that they wanted to keep doing, and they didn't want to adopt. So my aunt has really had a challenge of not having grandchildren, and kind of relating it to how she's in this stage where she wants to prepare for other generations. She wants her presence to remain known and be able to leave stuff. And while she has, me and her nieces and nephews and her son and all those people, she's really feeling that loss of not having a grandchild, and she struggles with that a little bit. A positive is the tightening bond that she has with her brother. When they grew up, they were kind of they were okay, but they were never really close, and they're polar opposites. My aunt's extremely outgoing and talkative, and that's probably where I get this fast talking from, because that's how she is. Where my dad is kind of a hermit. He doesn't like to go out. He doesn't need to be social and all of that. And just some things that have gone on in both their lives have just really caused them to get to know each other and be sources of support and comfort for each other. And that has been a huge thing in that stage, that middle adult stage for my aunt, is developing that relationship with my father, her brother. The other thing, as far as a crisis, I would say the biggest thing that was a crisis for my aunt during middle adulthood was really feeling pushed towards retirement. I've mentioned retirement a couple times. My aunt, when she was in her late 30s, early 40s, she went back to school. She always worked on farms and done that kind of thing, and she really had a calling for which she thought was horticulture, gardening, that kind of thing. So she went back to school, and she got a job right away, and she was younger 40s, a new position, and she really got a lot of accolades and moved up and received more responsibility. And her original supervisor was a true mentor to her, really cultivating her and helping her succeed. And he left, and then she got a new supervisor who was very racist and very sexist. And anyone who was not a white male, he treated incredibly horribly. And, she did approach him about it after a long period of time. She finally approached him about it, and she was treated worse. Went to his supervisor about it, and the supervisor told him, which of course made it even worse. And she was told that she was whining and complaining, and basically told, you're being a girl. If you want to be here with us and you want to do this, then you can't act this way. And that kind of goes back to that whole emotional regulation and everything that I referred to earlier. She had to regulate these emotions that she didn't want to regulate. She wanted to get them out and to feel them and to express them. But no matter how she did that, she told she was doing it wrong. And she ended up being miserable. She was at this job for years and years and loved what she did. But she kind of felt like, I'm not going to get another job at my age. And I'm getting close enough where I can retire, so forget it, I'm just going to retire. But she felt very pushed into that, and that was something she struggled with. She said for probably about 18 months, she really felt like a loser. She felt like, I don't know what I could have done differently in that situation, and she struggled back and forth with it. But on the positive, she got involved in a lot of other clubs, new clubs. She started volunteering for local organizations in the area, and she started developing relationships, deeper relationships, for example, with my daughter, her great niece. And it really allowed her an opportunity to bloom, which she really wasn't expecting when it happened, but it ended up being a great opportunity for her. And that kind of goes into, the crisis resolution. Like, being involved and getting support from people and being able to flourish, and being able to travel more. I mean, she traveled a lot during that time, but then she was able to travel more. It was really helpful to her, and a really positive thing for her. Definitely some of the events that contributed to this were obviously her gender, her race, but also not her race, her age and her physical health. Her physical health wasn't horrible, but she did have some knee problems, and her prior supervisor kind of accommodated for that, where she wasn't, pulling weeds all day. She got to get up and walk around, and it was almost like punishment for her. So her new supervisor knew she had these health issues, and he would have her doing things that he knew was not good for her. He would have her shoveling snow with a shovel instead of a snowblower, which made no sense. Just things like that. And she really felt like her age was a contributing factor, as well as her gender, that if she was younger, if she was a man, or she didn't have those physical problems, then she wouldn't have had the issues that she had there, at work, and feeling that she needed to go ahead and retire early. I'm going to go ahead and pause now and start my second recording. I have about a minute left. I will pick this up then.